All right, grab another cup of coffee, settle in, because we're about to embark on a proper historical expedition into the wonderful world of strategy video games. Let's do this. Hey there, history buffs and gamers. Welcome back to Historically Gaming. Today, we're not just dipping our toes into history, we're diving headfirst into a deep, delicious pool of strategic goodness. We're talking about the history of strategy video games. Now, this isn't just about clicking little dudes to attack other little dudes. This is a story of innovation, of adapting ancient ideas to new technology, and of countless hours spent outsmarting virtual and sometimes very real opponents. So get comfy because this is going to be a journey. To truly understand where these digital battlefields and empires came from, we need to rewind way back. Forget pixels for a moment, because the DNA of strategy gaming is deeply embedded in something much older: board games. Think about it. For thousands of years, humans have been engaging in strategic thought through physical games played on boards. Take Senet, for example, from ancient Egypt. Dating back as far as 3500 BCE, this wasn't just a game of chance. The movement of pieces and the potential for blocking and maneuvering suggest early forms of tactical thinking. It was a pastime enjoyed by pharaohs and commoners alike, hinting at our long-standing fascination with outsmarting an opponent. Then you have Go, originating in ancient China. This game is renowned for its profound strategic depth and complexity. With its simple rules of placing stones to control territory, Go unfolds into intricate webs of influence and long-term planning. It's often described as more akin to an art or a philosophy than just a game. The concepts of Sente and Gote are fundamental strategic considerations that resonate even in modern video games. And of course, we can't talk about strategic board games without mentioning chess. Developed from earlier games in India, chess in its various forms has been a staple of strategic thought for centuries. The distinct roles of each piece, the importance of positional advantage, and the potential for intricate tactical combinations have made it a timeless test of intellect. The opening gambits, the middle game maneuvering, the end game calculations, these are all foundational strategic concepts that have found their way into countless video games. But the more direct ancestors to strategy video games really emerged with the development of war games, particularly Kriegspiel in 19th century Prussia. This wasn't just a casual pastime, it was a serious tool for military training. Kriegspiel introduced elements of simulation that were crucial. You had different unit types with varying strengths and weaknesses, terrain that offered advantages, and even rudimentary rules for logistics and supply. These were no longer abstract pieces on a board. They were representations of military forces in a simulated environment. The meticulous rules and the emphasis on planning and execution were a direct precursor to the complex mechanics we see in many strategy video games today. It was about understanding the interplay of different elements to achieve a strategic objective. So, you see, the idea of strategic gameplay, of planning, resource management, tactical maneuvering, and long-term thinking has a rich history that predates the digital age by millennia. These board games weren't just entertainment. They were exercises in cognitive skill and simulations of real-world challenges, specifically conflict and governance. It's this foundational understanding of strategy that early computer game developers drew upon when they started to bring these concepts to life on our screens. Now let's leap into the digital age. The 1960s saw the birth of computing power, and naturally, people started thinking, what if we could do this strategy stuff on a computer? This is where we get into the really early simulations. Think text-based adventures where your decisions had long-term consequences. Games like the Sumerian game popping up around 1964 and its later more well-known evolution, Hammurabi, around 1971. These were incredibly basic visually, all text on a screen, but you were managing resources, making choices for a virtual city-state. It was about planning for the future, balancing needs, the very essence of strategy. And then, as home consoles started to appear, we got our first taste of visual strategy. Invasion for the Magnavox Odyssey in 1972 is often cited as the first console strategy game. It was simple, almost like a digital version of Risk, but it was a start. The 1980s were a pivotal time. Personal computers were becoming more accessible, opening up a whole new world for game development. Suddenly, you had more processing power and the ability to display rudimentary graphics. This is where we start seeing distinct strategy genres taking shape. Think about Computer Bismarck in 1980 by SSI. This is often considered the first historical computer war game. It was all about simulating naval combat during World War II. SSI became a real powerhouse in this early wargaming scene, bringing the complexity of tabletop wargames to the PC. Then you had the emergence of turn-based strategy, or TBS. Games like Eastern Front 1941 and 1981 really solidified this. You took your turn, moved your units, attacked, and then the AI took its turn. It was methodical, tactical, and required careful planning. And we can't forget the early inklings of grand strategy. Games like Reach for the Stars in 1983 were among the first 4X games. The 4X being explore, expand, exploit, and exterminate. You were building an interstellar empire, researching technologies, dealing with other civilizations. Around the same time, in Japan, Nobunaga's ambition was pioneering grand strategy with a historical Japanese setting, focusing on diplomacy and conquest. It's also worth mentioning games that blurred the lines like The Lords of Midnight in 1984. It combined elements of adventure, strategy, and wargaming in a really unique way. You were leading armies, but also exploring a world and managing characters. Now, things really start to get interesting in the late 80s and early 90s. We're on the cusp of a revolution, real-time strategy. While the core idea of strategy had always been turn-based, some developers were experimenting with letting players make decisions and issue commands simultaneously. Games like Utopia in 1981 had elements of real-time resource management and conflict. Then you had Herzog in 1988, and arguably Herzog Zwei on the Sega Genesis in 1989. A lot of people credit Herzog Zwei as the first true RTS game. You were directly controlling units in real time, managing resources, and trying to outmaneuver your opponent. It was fast-paced and required a different kind of strategic thinking. But the game that really blew the doors open and popularized the RTS genre for the masses, that was to be Dune II, the building of a dynasty in 1992. This game took the core elements, base building, resource gathering, and real-time unit control with a point-and-click interface, and refine them into something incredibly addictive and engaging. Brett Sperry, one of the creators, even coined the term real-time strategy to describe it. Dune 2 essentially laid the blueprint for almost every RTS game that followed. The mid to late 1990s were without a doubt the golden age of real-time strategy. It felt like every year brought a new game that redefined the genre or introduced a fresh take on the formula. You had Warcraft, Orcs and Humans in 1994, which brought a fantastic fantasy setting, compelling lore, and a more narrative-driven approach to the RTS. Its sequels would go on to become absolute juggernauts. Then came Command & Conquer in 1995, with its distinct factions, gritty storylines, and that iconic soundtrack. The rivalry between GDI and NOD became legendary, and let's not forget Red Alert in 1996, which took the CNC formula and threw in an alternate history Cold War scenario. Pure genius. Age of Empires in 1997 took a different approach, focusing on historical civilizations and the progression through different ages. It wasn't just about military might. Economic development and technological advancement were just as crucial. And then, of course, there's StarCraft in 1998. This game wasn't just a hit, it was a cultural phenomenon, especially in South Korea, where it became a cornerstone of early esports. The asymmetrical factions, the Terran, Zerg, and Protoss, each with their unique units and playstyles, were revolutionary. The strategic depth was incredible. Around the same time, Total Annihilation in 1997 was pushing the boundaries of what an RTS could be. It featured fully 3D units and terrain, massive scale battles with hundreds of units, and a real emphasis on macro management, controlling your economy and production across a large map. The sheer scope of the battles was mind-blowing. As we moved into the 2000s and beyond, the strategy genre didn't stagnate. It continued to evolve and diversify. We started seeing more distinct subgenres emerge and existing ones refined. One notable development was the rise of real-time tactics, or RTT. Games like Company of Heroes in 2006 shifted the focus from large-scale base building and towards the tactical control of smaller squads in dynamic, destructible environments. It was more about battlefield awareness and smart unit deployment. Grand strategy continued to become even more intricate and immersive. Series like Europa Universalis, Hearts of Iron, and Crusader Kings from Paradox Development Studio offered incredibly deep historical simulations with sprawling maps, complex political systems, and a focus on long-term empire management. You weren't just fighting battles, you were managing dynasties, trade routes, and international relations. The 4X genre remained strong with Civilization series, continuing its dominance, constantly adding new layers of complexity and replayability. We also saw other 4X games exploring sci-fi and fantasy settings, offering different strategic challenges. And then we have the explosion of MOBAs, or multiplayer online battle arenas. It all started with Defense of the Ancients, or DOTA, a mod for Warcraft 3 in 2002. This mod took real-time unit control and combined it with hero progression and strategic team-based gameplay. It was a completely new beast, and it paved the way for massive hits like League of Legends in 2009 and DOTA 2 in 2013, which have become global esports giants in their own right. While they have RTS elements, MOBAs have really carved out their own distinct strategic niche. Finally, while PC has always been the traditional home of strategy games, we've seen more and more strategy titles successfully making the jump to consoles and mobile platforms. Developers had to get creative with control schemes and interfaces, but games like XCOM on consoles and various tactical and grand strategy games on mobile show that the strategic itch can be scratched on different devices. Now, we've talked a lot about PCs and consoles, but we honestly can't ignore the massive impact that mobile gaming has had on the strategy landscape in more recent years. Our phones and tablets have become surprisingly powerful gaming platforms, and strategy games have found a really comfortable home there. Think about it. The touch interface, while different from a mouse and keyboard, actually lends itself quite well to certain types of strategy. Games like Clash of Clans really took off, popularizing a blend of base building, resource management, and real-time raiding on a massive scale. It brought strategic thinking to a whole new audience. Then you have games like Plague Incorporated, which, while unique, definitely requires strategic planning to, well, achieve its objective. It's a different kind of strategy focused on evolution and spread. What's really interesting is seeing how more traditional PC strategy games have actually been adapted for mobile. We've seen surprisingly faithful ports of games like Company of Heroes, XCOM, and even grand strategy titles like Rome Total War and Civilization Revolution. Developers have had to get creative with the controls and user interfaces, but the core strategic gameplay translates surprisingly well to a touchscreen. Mobile strategy games often emphasize shorter play sessions and streamlined mechanics to fit the on-the-go nature of the platform. But don't let that fool you. Many of them still offer a surprising amount of strategic depth and tactical nuance. It's a testament to the enduring appeal of the strategy genre that has found such a successful niche in the mobile gaming world. So there you have it, a pretty deep dive into the history of strategy video games. From ancient battlefields of board games to the complex digital worlds of today, it's been an incredible journey of innovation and evolution. It's amazing to see how those early ideas of planning and outmaneuvering have been translated and expanded upon with each new generation of technology. What are some of your favorite strategy games from throughout history? Let me know in the comments below. It's always great to hear what games have shaped your own strategic thinking. Thanks for joining me on this historical quest, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!